I think now we will go back to response and summary by petitioners. There have been several questions posed that you may wish to comment upon, or anything additional, I guess you wish to say. Most of the questions seem to have focused on the issue of directors. And I guess Steph Bilcock, if that's the correct name, said something about future planning regarding building utilization. So if you wish to discuss those or anything else, please come up. Sure.
It would only be a partial answer, I believe, to the questions that relate to board of election of board members. The petition does state 5 board members elected in a general election or at large. The one thing that I would like to share is that, and that would be with the AEA board as well as the audience, is that in this process there is an interim board. And the interim board is typically or generally based in its representation by the populations of the districts. I don't know if the AEA board has studied or looked at the size of the 2 school districts or population, but they're very close and similar in size. It would appear that of those 5 board members that would make up the interim board that would serve as the 3rd board that operates from the time of the election, a positive election, until whole grade sharing or until reorganization actually occurs, that there would be 2 board members representing the SAC district, and they would come from the current SAC Board of Education, 2 board members from the current Walleye-Fuyavin Board of Education, and those board members agreed unanimously on a 5th board member. And I believe we had, I'm going to look at Rick and I'm going to look at Danielle, because I believe we had those conversations at a phone call, a conference call this summer. So my understanding is that if the vote would pass in February with a positive vote, then there's a time period in which the interim board must be organized. And for a period of time then, from February of 2010 through the beginning of the whole grade, or the new district, East Sac County Community School District, until the first election in an odd year of election, there would be a board that would have guaranteed representation from each district. 2 SAC, 2 Walleye-Fuyavin, and then that 5th person would be jointly agreed to. That board then would be making decisions related to the topics related to reorganization. And I field questions from the AEA board members if they have any questions. I'm looking at Rick because I recollect that we had this conference call and talked about, no?
No, yes, I can say something about that. Maybe Danielle wants to too, I don't know. Did you wish to speak to the building question as well, or not?
My response to that would be that as 2 individual school boards, as well as having met jointly, we have not talked about utilization of buildings. We do have 4 buildings that we currently use, but we have not made any concrete plans for a long-term, in the future, what buildings would be used. So there's no plan, I guess is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Anything further at all from anyone on these things? Okay. The next item on the agenda is questions by board members, and in the context of, I'm kind of deferring any comments that I might make about those topics until we get to deliberation, assuming that's the appropriate time for that, or I guess I can say a few things now. But are there any questions by board members of any of the presenters that you wish to have before we go to the deliberations phase?
I'm concerned what the procedure is for changing the method of electing board members. Why don't you use your mic so they I am unclear what the procedure is for changing this method of electing board members. Who can choose to do that? In other words, is that something the interboard could do if they chose to, the new board, when it's elected, if it chose to change, I would assume it would be a little bit inappropriate for us to make that change in the petition. But what, I guess I'm just not clear on the procedure for making that change.
Okay, are there any other questions? And I'll answer that question to the extent that I can, and then, well, let me just go ahead and, I was going to look first here in the code because I was going to also think about the potential for a sitting board changing its method of elections, and I just want to look at that a second. That's also in chapter 235, or 275, but okay. This is always interesting. The first part I'm quite confident on, and I will support the statements of Superintendent Krutoff in that regard. The second part, I didn't know that this question was going to come up here, so you know, this will be a decision that would have to be made by the school district if it chose to do so sometime down the road with the assistance of its legal counsel. I'm not its legal counsel, so I'm just talking to you about how I understand certain things could work. As you heard, or I think hopefully you understood, what the superintendent was explaining to you was the petition that is in front of the AEA board tonight provides the carryover appointment method, is what I call it, of 275-41 of the Iowa Code. When you have a reorganization petition, you can choose to do two things. You can specially elect all your new directors, or you can appoint them from existing boards. In my personal experience, having been involved in many reorganizations over the years, and most of the time working for local school districts, they have found the carryover appointment method to be extremely popular. They like the idea of having board members who are currently sitting board members who are involved in the process moving toward reorganization, who have some experience as being board members, to be that first board that would govern the newly reorganized district. This petition in front of this board provides for such a methodology. As the superintendent explained to you, according to the population numbers, apparently, according to the last census, and we're almost to another census now, but we're supposed to work with our most recent federal decennial census, the population balance in the two districts is close to 50-50. So if you have a 5-member initial board appointed off of existing boards, that would mean that 2 board members would be appointed from the sitting Wall Lake View Auburn board, 2 board members would be appointed from the SAC board. That 4-person board would meet, be sworn in, and because it's 50-50 and you need 5 members, they would attempt to unanimously select a 5th board member. And lacking their ability to unanimously select a 5th board member, they would go to special election to elect a 5th board member. That's how 275-41 works. Now, the other thing that the superintendent was explaining to you, also correctly, that this election, if the board approves the reorganization petition proceeding and sends it to election, because of the limited number of special election dates that are now allowed under the Iowa Code, the vote would not occur until February 2nd of 2010. Also, because of the way the code is written, the effective date of the reorganization would not be until July 1, 2011. So for at least a year and a half, and actually a little longer, until you hit that first election cycle in September of 2011, electing board members now for 4-year terms in odd-numbered years, you are going to have 2 board members from Wall Lake View Auburn, 2 board members from SAC. So if the concern out there is, I don't like elections at large because I'm concerned about the possibility that all the board members could be from one side of the district or the other side of the district, it's certainly not going to be that way for the first year and a half toward 2 years.